Ah yes, Dungeons & Dragons, everyone's favorite tabletop role-playing game. I absolutely love Dungeons & Dragons. I mean, if you've been following this channel at all, you probably already know that. I haven't really had a lot of time to play Dungeons & Dragons over the last year, but luckily one of my friends invited me recently to take part in their Curse of Strahd game. I played Curse of Strahd probably at least 20 times, but hands down, this was probably the funniest foray into this world of Barovia that I've ever had, and it only lasted one session. Personally, I think Curse of Strahd might be Wizards of the Coast's best Dungeons & Dragons source material campaign guide. Essentially, it's this kind of spook macabre story where the players are sucked into another realm, the world of Barovia, controlled by the vampire lord and uber-powerful bad guy, Strahd von Saurovich. This is a super fun, dark, spooky campaign that has a ton of replayability. There's so many different ways that you can run this Curse of Strahd game, and really the beauty of it is that there's so much content in this game that no two Curse of Strahd games are going to be run or have the same thing happen in them. Having run Curse of Strahd many times in the past and having played it several times as well, I jumped on the chance to get to jump into this dark world of Barovia once again. And spoiler alert, it didn't last very long. In today's video, I want to tell you all the story of my Curse of Strahd game and the hilarious clusterfuck ending. So our Curse of Strahd game started off very differently than the average Curse of Strahd game, as our party had already adventured for a slight while, becoming level 3 before we were introduced into the world of Barovia. Our party consists of Marth, the elven himbo fighter, Brother Isaac, a scammer and rather shady cleric who makes sure to charge for all of his services, Goku Fortnite, a cleric who throws hammer first, asks questions later, and my character Rin, a hoity-toity dragonborn bard who I quickly realized was the only one with common sense in this party. Very quickly I realized in this game that I was the only one who made a character that, well, thinks before they act, so I knew that insanity was going to ensue. Now my dungeon master, the awesome doom guy Fieri, decided to do something interesting with the start of our Curse of Strahd game. Oftentimes a Curse of Strahd game begins with the ominous Death House, an optional side adventure that is at the beginning of Curse of Strahd that is notorious for killing many players. Our dungeon master decided to take his own spin on this, and our story began with the House of Lament, an optional investigative mystery kind of side adventure that is in Von Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. Essentially, the idea is that the party become trapped in a haunted home where they are forced to escape by solving the mystery of the haunting, investigating the home for clues, trying to discover the history of this haunted house, and then doing multiple seances, ultimately banishing the spirits. This is not at all what happened in our Curse of Strahd game. As I said, quickly I realized that I was the only one role-playing a character with semi-high intelligence and, well, self-preservation instincts, as my character was surrounded by a group of low-int, low-wisdom characters who oftentimes acted before they thought. Now, normally what happens in the House of Lament is that players enter the house, and the house is in a state of rest, a state of dormancy, allowing for players to explore and investigate without being attacked by all sorts of ghosts and ghouls who go bump in the night. This quickly went to shit when one of my party members decided to cast heat metal on a statue of a periton, a large bird carnivore creature. This is basically the definition of fuck around and find out in D&D, as suddenly the statue became alive. After a quick combat where we hastily defeated the creature, suddenly things started to go even more to shit, as now the house had become alive, all of the spirits becoming active. Instantly, our party began to be pursued by a revenant as well as other undead creatures and the many traps throughout the house. At this point, we were supposed to have investigated the house and discovered many clues about the home and why it was haunted and the family who previously lived here. Suddenly, things get even worse as we are ambushed by a number of spirits, these shadowy-esque limbs that attempt to drag our party members into the walls. And it's here when things went horribly wrong, as within one turn, my squishy bard boy had gone unconscious. Now at this point, the situation was salvageable, as the spirits that surrounded us were no longer hostile. In fact, they were being sucked into the walls away from us. My character's body lay unconscious on the ground within melee of 3 baddies. It's then one of my party members, in a valiant effort, attempts to grab my body and pull me to safety. Yeah, if you're a hardcore D&D nerd or a dungeon master, then you know what's about to happen. As my friend pulls my character's unconscious body out of melee from these 3 baddies, the worst happens. Attack of opportunity, that's instantly 4 death saves failed, and my character's dead. At this point, all pandemonium breaks loose as my friend who just got my character killed freaks the fuck out, having realized what he has done and feels horrible. From here, things plunge into absolute insanity as the 3 remaining members of our party try to run from this fight, pushing through multiple rooms, triggering multiple traps, and running past multiple enemies, taking numerous attacks of opportunity. Within 2 rounds, we had 2 player characters dead, only 2 remaining, and you know how this story ends, with a complete TPK wipe. Yes, that's right, our trip into Barovia lasted 1 whole session until our party completely TPK'd. I think out of our entire time spent in the House of Lament, we maybe found 1 clue having to deal with the actual mystery in its entirety. In reality, you're supposed to explore the house, find number of clues, do number of seances to try to appease the spirits. Yeah, we didn't get to do any of that. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. This shit was absolutely hilarious. Personally, I love when my fellow players stick to their characters, even if it means a detriment to the party, the group overall, or the ultimately death of a character, in this instance, the death of an entire party. I do, however, feel bad for my dungeon master. At the end of the day, as a dungeon master, it is almost impossible to predict what your players are going to do. You can think long and hard and try to develop numerous different paths, trying to predict what actions your players are going to take, but at the end of the day, players are going to do what players are going to do, and I don't think he even could have predicted how much of a clusterfuck this group of miscreants, our party, would get up to in this Curse of Strahd game. Ultimately, this is a classic story of fuck around and find out in Dungeons and Dragons, as Curse of Strahd is supposed to be a more kind of deadly, darker game where there very much are consequences to your actions. I've played Curse of Strahd numerous times. I've ran the game for numerous players. I've been a player in the game many times over throughout the years. Like I said, it's one of my favorite Wizard of the Coast source books, as in general, I find the Wizard of the Coast source books like pretty lacking, but Curse of Strahd, I think, is an absolute great adventure guide, and this by far and away is probably going to be my most memorable foray into Barovia, into Curse of Strahd, and it only lasted 1 session and ended in a TPK. I think this is a perfect example about how awesome and amazing Dungeons and Dragons is, as every single experience within Dungeons and Dragons at the role-playing table, you just never know what you're going to get. You just never know what kind of party dynamic, what kind of story is going to be told, and I absolutely love it. Don't worry though, guys, our whole party is going to be re-rolling new characters and venturing back into Curse of Strahd, this time hopefully longer than a single session. And yes, this was my 1 session story of Curse of Strahd, and one of the funniest TPKs that I've ever been a part of. If you enjoyed this type of Dungeons and Dragons story content and you want more of it, let me know in the comment section down below, as this is a bit of a different foray from the type of content that I usually do. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one. Drink your water, love your mother. Until next time, stay safe out there. Peace, love, Adu.
I'm not saying you can't spit. Some of you wasn't born in, some of you was kids. I was 15, born in 1980, said it's 95. Yeah, some of the best.